everyone, and welcome back to the Kaiju Cataclysm podcast. This is episode 2, and I am your host, Dreagen. Joining me, as always, is my lovely host,
Ashley.
And today we have a very special guest in the house, Mr.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Greg Holmes here.
Excellent. So today's kind of a big episode. I mean, it big in the sense that if you are familiar with the whole kaiju scene, this is something you've probably been waiting for a long time. We are talking about the first kind of official full-length trailer that actually shows us something of Shin Gojira, a.k.a. Godzilla Resurgence, in the West. I saw it a couple days ago. I know, Greg, you only just saw it, so interesting enough, I want to start with you because you're kind of fresh after seeing it.
Yeah.
I've watched it a few times, and my opinion has been kind of going back and forth. But what are your thoughts on it thus far?
So I think I like that it's a very. It already looks like it's going to be a very emotional film. From a movie standpoint, I think it's going to be really good. It looks interesting. Like it's going to be interesting how they. It'll be interesting how they explain how he looks the way he does.
Why he looks so pretty.
Yeah. And then from other standpoints, from just somebody who designs creatures, who's drawn monsters for most of my life. I don't like the way his face looks, like the way his eyes are. They seem too small for a beast his size.
Yeah.
Not saying like the American Godzilla, the legendary Godzillas, that and previous ones are how it should be. Because I understand everybody it throws their own spin on how Godzilla looks, and we've had different looks and variations, but each one it's always like the eyes have never been super beady like they are with this one.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, it looks like his arm. It doesn't look like the arms really move at all. Like they're just there, and they could explain whatever how he was mutated or how I just keep saying he or she or whatever. I don't know how they're going with it now.
Yeah.
What type of animal it came from and how it mutated and what caused it to certain parts to fully mutate and other parts just kind of
Almost look underdeveloped.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't like was I kind of didn't like how the tail looked like. The tail almost seemed like it was its own creature, like it was sentient on its own.
It was enormous. I think it was longer than
but
his body.
It's if you cut it, like it's probably just as tall, if not taller than Godzilla.
Yeah.
Self. And then there's the thing where you the muscles peeking through, or the almost lava skin peeking through the reptilian skin. There's just a lot of questions as far like the design and everything. And I said this, that if you've seen the manga Monsters or any of the horror mangas, like he's got that very super detailed monster horror look, which is, I think, is great. It gives him he looks a lot scarier than Godzilla's ever looked in any of the films. It's literally like a thing of nightmares is what it looks like. It's that thing where, in this case, like in Japan, in this iteration where they talk about, this town's attacked by a giant monster, they call Godzilla, then it's more so for kids to be really scared of than just, oh, it's Godzilla, like he could be lovable or not, or
yeah, there's a lot of gray area with this one. It's pretty
yeah, this one's pretty straightforward, that it's this monstrous being, it's this deadly creature. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see where it goes. But just that part of Godzilla walking around, kind of just, we're on close-ups and things like that. Like, I know they were trying to mix the like CG in the suit, but it just kind of looks like they mixed some parts, but they didn't mix all of it. Like, one part, most of it's the suit, some of it's CG. There's no cohesive.
There's no real blend of it, not as much as they kind of maybe touted when they were originally talking about it.
Yeah, and for all we know, like, this, what they released could still be in post-production, but it's good enough to show.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that could be a reason why the trailer we got now, it was mostly practical. Because I know a lot of people were saying, well, they were kind of talking about having more CG overlays on, which, with the exception of like the glow, there really wasn't any CG on him. And I would say it might be one of the, obviously with CG, they're pretty much working on it usually till right up to the film's released, because it's all done in post production. Whereas if the benefit of having a practical effect, it's there on set. So this trailer might have just shown mostly a practical Godzilla, because obviously they have that shot and ready to go. Because besides just seeing, he really didn't do much in the trailer. He just kind of plodded along. In some shots, he was just standing there. So I'm saying, well, with this suit, the way it's designed, it seems like it's very rigid and very stoic. So if Godzilla's going to have any kind of real movement, I feel that might come in either with a more CG element. I know they actually did some puppet work in this film too. For like
I'm not, I'm not passing judgment on it yet, but I'm waiting until the film actually comes out to say whether or not, it's really good or.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's still post production. It's still in post.
I mean, I'm sure some of it's still got to be it, because I mean, obviously there's not going to be as much CGI as there was in the the legendary film. But again, I mean, already I've noticed that it seems to me this time around they're doing a lot more compositing than less miniature cities. I mean, I know they did some miniature stuff where it's really close up of him just stepping on something, but it seems like they composite him into a lot of actual like shots of the real city.
Yeah.
Ashley, you saw the trailer shortly after me, mainly because I started texting you like crazy, telling you to watch it.
I think I saw it literally probably right after you must have, because you texted me and I had already seen it.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I know it just kind of came out of nowhere, like on social media.
I was at work.
What are your thoughts when you were, because we'd both been kind of following this film more or less, and we saw the initial poster that got released, but now that you finally got to see the new design in action, more or less, I guess, what was your take on it?
I mean, I thought it was, because I know you had said, they were saying they were going to be doing a lot more CG. I was thinking, I didn't realize they were going to be doing so much suit work still. I thought it was going to be more like the, the Gamera, like, proof or whatever.
Oh, that Gamera, like, concept trailer.
Yeah, concept trailer. Where, it was completely CG, or like the Ultraman one even. It was completely CG. I thought it was going to be more like that, which, it's not disappointing. Like, the actual practical effects look good. But, I do think his design's a little off balance or disproportionate. Like you said, his tail's super long. Like,
his tail's enormous. Crazy long.
And then his tiny little baby arms. Like, like...
No.
And his head is just really tiny. I don't know. It's weird, but again, I know, everyone thinks maybe he's going to change throughout the film, so it's like, maybe that's the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there's rumors saying that maybe he's in the process of, like, quote-unquote regenerating, and what we're seeing now is kind of like his good enough to kind of show his face form, and then as he either, like, I guess, like, I don't know, consumes more radiation, or again, this is all conjecture I've heard. This is anything specific that by the end of the film he will look more, I guess,
normal.
Or put together, or kind of resembling more the Godzilla we kind of know. Again, I don't know. There really hasn't been much released in terms of like plot of this movie. My impressions of it's definitely. I mean, I know they said they wanted to kind of show a Godzilla that we've never seen before, and to that I will say it's a complete success. He definitely stands out in the pantheon of all the different designs. But yeah, again, a lot of this, again, I guess if based on what they said they're going for, a lot of the complaints, I guess you could say, are as a success, because I know they said with this one they're not trying to have him be endearing in any way, which, again, they've done it. I guess I would argue, is that necessarily the right way to go? Because while, yes, Godzilla is bad news for everyone when he shows up, you're not... Even when you're rooting for him, realistically speaking, you wouldn't want Godzilla to actually happen in real life. You know, it's cool to watch him in the movies, but if that actually happened, that would really be a shitty day. But, again, I think they really took that idea and they ran with it. They really pushed it to the nth degree, which, again, it is a bold move. I mean, I don't know. It's weird for me because from just an aesthetic, I don't really like it. You know, I've always been more of a fan of like the badass scary than as opposed to like the creepy scary. I mean, creepy scary has its place. Like you watch something like Aliens.
Well, and again, I think part of the problem for me is he's just so rigid. Like, and because he isn't moving his arms at all, and his you know his neck, like it's almost like he's got a back brace on. Yeah,
and like, I know because traditionally the suits, it's always been the actor moving the arms. In the suit, so there was that bit of emotive behavior, so to speak. Whereas I know they still use suits in this one, but now the actor's arms are like down at their side. They're not controlling the arms.
Unless maybe it's up and he's controlling the head or something.
Yeah, it might be, but the arms are now kind of just there, very rigid. They're not moving. When I first saw how small they're going to be, I was thinking, well, maybe that's where the CGI is going to come into play.
True.
Like his tail and his arms will kind of be able to move that way while the actor is just kind of controlling the head, because it's a very tall suit. I know they said I think it takes 3 operators to operate the whole thing. So I was like, okay, well, that's probably what's going to happen. The arms are either going to be puppeteered or they're going to just move digitally. But that trailer, and again, this could be because that's the only shots they have ready to go. And then with the CGI, maybe that's exactly what he's going to do. But as it stands right now, all we have is what we've been given. And right now, he's just kind of...
I mean, it's composited really well, so...
yeah. Especially that shot towards the end where they're kind of firing at him. You see the explosions kind of on his legs and it pans up. Like, the compositing of is really done really well. Like, I was actually really impressed by that. But as far as he goes, he's still very much a tokusatsu effect, which I know a lot of kind of fanboys and purists are, pumping their fists in the air over.
See, I don't even. I don't think it's so much for. I mean, for me, anyways, it's not so much that it's still just a suit. Again, it's just that it's such a rigid suit compared to the past ones. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of other Godzilla suits that had more flexibility. My thing with this film, and again, I mean, this is obviously not a film that's designed for a worldwide mass audience. This is very much, the Japanese market, and for all the kind of, diehard, kaiju
fanboys.
Yeah. Whereas the legendary Godzilla, for instance, that's a Godzilla for a mass market.
Everyone.
And one of the interesting things is, like, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is the Godzilla return to form. Like, well, the only reason why this Godzilla is happening is because of the success of the legendary film. Because Godzilla box office started to tank in Japan. That's why they stopped making them, because they weren't making money anymore. Because, younger audiences now were used to more Western films with, big effects budgets. So I hate to say it, but people in suits just weren't really doing it for them, even for them anymore. Whereas then you see the American one, and he's still Godzilla, but now he's Godzilla kind of loosened up a bit. Now he can do things the original one couldn't, or do things to a greater degree. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And because of the renewed interest in Godzilla, Toho felt comfortable. Okay, well, we can kind of make one of our own, knowing full well it's not going to outcompete the legendary one, but it can kind of just ride that wave, which, for me as a diehard fan, I'm fine with. But at the same time, I remembered when they first announced they were doing it, they basically said, we're going to make a film that doesn't bow to the American film and can stand toe-to-toe with it. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe in spirit, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to match what's on screen. I mean,
to reproduce those numbers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understood the sentiment saying, and again, I'm not one of those people who think, oh, just because a movie's expensive means it's good. I mean, there are some really cheap independent films that are amazing. And this could very well, I could end up liking this film better than the Legendary film. Doesn't change the fact that it's not going to do those numbers. It's not going to. I mean, most people outside of our little humble community don't even know this movie's happening. Like when the trailer dropped, all the pages and on Facebook and YouTube channels I follow that talk about kaiju films were blowing up. And then I looked at my feed of all the normal entertainment stuff. No one's talking about it. And that's the thing people have to remember too. While this is great news for us, this movie's kind of meant just for us. So, and without, the big, $200 million effects extravaganza that, Legendary's putting out, we wouldn't have this movie.
This new one, yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'll enjoy it. I mean, I've enjoyed, pretty much most of the Godzilla films that I've watched. I don't think I've ever seen one that I haven't liked, minus the 98 one, but
yeah.
I don't know anybody that would consider that a Godzilla film. I know everybody exactly. More so this is a giant monster film. But anyways, but I think like it'll be interesting to see what Toho does if go on to one of the other points you made in the notes that if this will be an ongoing series or if this will kind of be a standalone one from Toho, if they're just going to do a bunch of one-offs instead of how they have one director and they do a series of films, and it's the so and so era of Godzilla and their 4 films or their 5 films or whatever, and then they stop and then there's a lull and then a new director takes over and you get a different kind of a different take on Godzilla each time a new director took over for a series of films. Depending on how this one does, I think is going to dictate how they carry on.
Yeah.
How Toho carries on with their Godzilla. And I mean, for all we know, this could be something where that leads into the Legendary one. This is like a prequel almost. That this Godzilla, like you're saying, is on the could be in the middle of regeneration, and at the end of the film, it looks like not the Toho, but the Legendary Godzilla, and then it goes dormant, and that's where it ends, and then so many years later, the Legendary picture happens. So we could see this as as an unannounced prequel to the Legendary. That they're not going to, they might not come out and say it, but we could see how it ends, and that would be kind of rad. Where Toho does like these little meanwhile or kind
of in
between stories and things like that.
Do you think they would though, or do you think that they're going to try to? Because that's, I mean, again, I know Toho was very pleased with the success of the Legendary film, and I know they actually really, really liked it. Because that's the thing, they had to sign off on everything before they could even go into production with that film. That's another thing I tell people too. It's like don't hate on that movie too much, because Toho greenlit, approved, signed off on every aspect of that film. They could not do anything in that movie until they got the approval from them, even the design itself. So, I mean, it's interesting because again, that film kind of, ironically enough, the initial marketing for it was almost like it was going to be this very dark, kind of cryptic, apocalyptic Godzilla. And then you watch the film and it's like, surprise, he's the hero, and he kind of became more like the Showa era kind of hero Godzilla. Whereas this film, it seems like they're truly like saying, okay, well, you're doing kind of the superhero good guy Godzilla. I mean, he's not really a good guy, but for better or for worse, he's usually the lesser of two evils or whatever when he's on screen with something else. Whereas this one, it seems like they're very much saying,
pretty reboot.
Yeah, well, they're saying he is, he's bad news bears basically. But the interesting thing is, okay, the Japanese title Shin Gojira, that can literally translate to like true or real or godlike Godzilla, and in the West, it's been translated to Godzilla Resurgence. And on our first episode, I made it very clear that if you at any point in your life want to resurge, you must first, in fact, surge. So if you want to resurge, start surging right now, so at a later point in time, you can resurge. So if Godzilla is resurging, is this going to maybe be the original Godzilla, the one that was destroyed in '54? Because a lot of people are saying the reason why he looks the way he does is that he might actually have been regenerating all these decades from the oxygen destroyer, and he's kind of put himself back together. But now he's all messed up, and also why he's bigger too. Because one of the things they even said at the end of that film was that, all right, well, we destroyed one weapon with an even more destructive weapon, so what will this new weapon beget? And it's almost like maybe that weapon beget like an even worse Godzilla.
Right.
Like, you know, because again, he's bigger now. This is the biggest he's ever been, so he's over double the size of what he was in 1954. So obviously, for continuity's sake, if this is the original one, they're going to have to explain why he's so much larger. But that could also play into, again, why he looks all messed up, basically. Like, the more damage he takes, almost maybe like the worse he becomes, the more unnatural looking. Which is an interesting idea for it.
But also, too, it could be explained that, you know, maybe it's not a, you know, it's a he, but it's also, too, that, you know, Godzilla has laid eggs or, you know, has had offspring. That would explain the, you know, the legendary one. And it could explain that him being the original, that he's constantly mutating because of the radiation, and that his body, you know, the newer iterations are able to cope with it, and it's natural to them to have that flowing through them. But for this one, it could be that's why it's much bigger. That's why it looks like the skin is ripping off and it's glowing, is that it's just, you know, probably going until it just, you know, will just rip itself apart. And then that'll be the end of that one. And then there'll be the other ones left to kind of take its place.
How do you feel about him being I mean, as far as we know at this point, unless there's, again, another surprise waiting for us, being the only monster in this film? Because if that's the case, this will be the third time he's appeared solo in a movie.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, you that's how the very first Godzilla film was. I mean, that's, you know, the first film was about them fighting this monster, this, you know, this creature that, you know, they don't know how it, you know, became, or, you know, they don't know. It's this thing. They're trying to deal with this one monster, and they don't know that there's other monsters out there.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, the only monster. If Godzilla's the only monster in this film, then, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's dealing with the devastation of this one monster, and, you know, they very well could throw in another monster at the last minute. But I don't think it's a bad thing if he's the only monster. I don't see a reason to always have him, you know, always having him fight another monster in every film. I mean, that's just, it's like, well, Godzilla's back. Open. Here's another monster for him to fight.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about Godzilla 2000. I really liked that movie, and ironically enough, the fight, you know, at the end of it was actually, I think, one of the best ones. But interestingly enough, I think that film would have been better off at starting out with just kind of the first half of that film when it's just him. I would think that would like to see a whole movie where it's like that, and then jump into the rest of that era of films with another one. Because the era before, the Heisei era, started in '84 with just him by himself. And I always thought that's kind of a good way to start him off, because it's already a lot, I think, for people to kind of accept the idea where we could have a world where giant monsters exist. So I think it's always kind of have to reintroduce it with kind of just one, you know, just kind of get people used to the idea of like, okay, something this big exists, and that it can just, you know, essentially it can come ashore, do the kind of destruction it does, and there's nothing we can do about it, basically. So I think if you kind of drop in too many too fast, it kind of overwhelms. Again, I mean, if you're familiar with the genre at this point, then yeah, you kind of know how it works out. But if you're someone who's new to it, like you're just kind of watching these films for the first time, I think it's always, I usually start off people with like either 54 or 84, because it's like, well, he's by himself. It's a more quote unquote realistic story, that there's no aliens or this or that in it. It's just kind of him being what he is and kind of being treated more like a natural disaster, and you know, and kind of how a government would react to something like that happening. Basically. Right. So I'm kind of hoping that it's looking like this what it's going to be. Where
it kind of seems kind of like an unofficial reboot in a way too. Kind of like how everyone keeps saying The Force Awakens is kind of a reboot for Star Wars. It kind of feels like maybe that's what they're trying to treat this as too. Like, it's technically a continuation from the original, but in terms of the story, it seems like it could be again, like an unofficial
like
reboot.
a soft reboot.
Yeah.
Or because they're kind of reintroducing those same themes and ideas in a
his
modern setting.
design is based on, obviously closer to the original.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because when I've always said that I would the original maquette they built for 54 before they even built any of the suits. Because little known fact, the suit that you see in the movie is actually the second suit because the first one was too heavy. They put the actor inside and he literally couldn't move it. So they had to like scrap it and build another one. But they did that originally. He did like a 2-foot like model that he has kind of a design, and I've always loved that kind of early design. I've always had if they do another, I would like for them to base it off that look. And with this one, they actually apparently did that, but they took it in a more kind of monstrous direction. I was thinking more of not like a literal copy of that one, but kind of modernize that kind of design. And in this film, it seems like they kind of did that, but they kind of almost like did like the Frankenstein's monster version of that, like where Godzilla before was scary because he was, a big monster. So, I mean, he could be Barney, and if he's 50 meters tall and knocking over buildings, he's gonna be scary. Whereas this film, like, it's not so much that he's big. It's not just that he, destroys things, but just looking at him, you just want to look away. And normally I would say, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where for them, I think that's what they wanted. I mean, it's not what I would have wanted in terms of a Godzilla design, but I definitely don't think he looks this way as an accident. I think they knew what they were getting themselves into, and I think they did a lot of these design things on purpose because they know that it runs contrary to what we expect, regardless of, again, whether that's a good idea or not. Because like I said, I get what they're going for, and at first glance, yes, they did achieve that. He is repulsive. He is just nightmare fuel to look at. But once you get past that, it's like, okay, but now how is he going to really perform in the movie? Because in addition to just being scary, Godzilla, for me at least, has to kind of fill a bit of a quota in terms of what he does on screen. Different iterations do different things to different degrees, but there's usually kind of at least he has to do, certain things. And right now, from what I've seen, he seems very stoic. Like the legendary Godzilla was kind of, for those of you who are familiar with American football, I was going to say he's kind of built like a defensive lineman. Basically, he's not fast, he's not lean, but he's basically designed to be just big and just designed to take and dish out punishment. And if you watch him in that movie, he's just beating monsters down. It's like he's like watching an old wrestling match. I mean, he's just stomping them, he's beating them. This isn't a Godzilla that's designed just to hand out punishment.
Yeah,
that's why he's scary. And even the way he stands, he's a little bit more hunched over. He doesn't do that tall,
kind of standoffish.
Yeah, where he doesn't have that regal, kind of his chest is puffed out and he's tall. He's kind of hunched over. He's kind of squared his shoulder. He's ready to fight. When he steps in, he's not trying to he's intimidating because he's going to kick your ass. And I like that. Well, this Godzilla obviously can't evoke that same that same feel. He doesn't look like he's down to throw down.
Well, that's kind of like, it doesn't matter how cool he looks if he can't really perform, and like they're trying to go so realistic. If he's just going to be kind of,
plodding along.
Yeah, like it's cool, but
especially coming off the heels of the legendary film where he was really like,
animated.
He's like curb stomp. He's like breathing fire down other monsters' throat. Like he's impaling them in buildings. Like he was getting his hands dirty. He was like kind of the Jason Statham of the Godzilla world. He's not there to look cool. He's there to basically get the job done, which I appreciated. And I think for this film, it's supposed to be more of like you kind of just are in awe of just the scope of what he is by him just being there. And again, I grew up watching a lot of Godzilla films where he was very much like that. But in today's audience, will that hold up? Especially Japanese audience, because the legendary film, ironically enough, was received very well in Japan. Most of the fanboys that were complaining were like American fanboys, ironically, saying that this isn't the way Toho would do it. Even though Toho was like, yeah, if we had the money, we would have. And all the fans were even saying that, yeah, this is really cool. It was Godzilla. It was still the monster we knew and loved. but it was Godzilla kind of now in a modern era where he felt like he was not just some retro thing from back in the day, where he felt like he belonged in kind of today's cinematic landscape, which I agree with. So I mean, again, I'm excited for this movie. I'm looking forward to it, and no matter how ugly he looks, I'm still excited there's another Godzilla movie. My only concern is for the franchise going, did they maybe go too much in one direction?
Right.
Again, I mean, props for taking a risk, and all kinds of kudos to Toho for allowing that to happen, because I know in the past they've been kind of very strict about what you can and cannot do with them. So that's why I was surprised when I saw them. I was like, wow, I'm kind of shocked that that they took, because to me this is more of a departure than the Legendary one was, because aside from a bigger budget and CGI, he was kind of basically had the look of the more modern Godzilla, but he was kind of doing stuff from more like the 60s and 70s Godzilla, when he was just like legit fighting. So for me, it was very much seeing kind of like an old friend with like a facelift. Is kind of the way I looked at it. Was the Legendary one. With this one, I was like, oh my god, it's like a friend who you haven't seen in years, and they've just been smoking and just had a bit of a meth addiction along the way. And then you see like, oh man, wow,
you've changed.
You fall on some rough times there, homie.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, I mean, I'm sure the film will be fine. I mean, I know the creative team behind it. The two directors' names elude me at the moment. I'm very sorry about that. I know one of them is a gentleman who, actually, it's Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi are directing. I believe Anno is the one who did. Yeah, Anno actually is the one who's behind Evangelion. So if you're ever wondering why this movie has such an apocalyptic feel to it. Interesting enough, I don't know if you've seen the promotion they're doing over there with Evangelion.
No.
Yeah, they're doing.
Wow. Yeah, no, they've got a really badass picture of Unit 1 and Godzilla fighting.
Sorry, yeah.
And
I guess they're doing a bunch of like Nerve / Godzilla merchandise, where it's the Nerve logo, but instead of having the leaf on the other side, it's the his spines. And it's because I guess Anno is involved with it, so they're kind of doing like a joint thing. But they released that first image on April Fool's, and so a lot of people thought they were basically kind of essentially doing a joke, saying they're going to do a Godzilla versus Evangelion movie, which if you can pull that off,
Godzilla's the final angel.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But yeah, and apparently they're doing like a joint like marketing. So if you go to like the Evangelion website, it's got a bunch of like Godzilla stuff on it. So I mean, it's interesting. But yeah. So, and Higuchi just did the recent Attack on Titan films, which I have not seen yet. I know.
I downloaded one. I just didn't watch it.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the anime or the manga. I mean, I don't know. And I know a lot of people, their complaints for it were that
they changed characters.
Which I don't know. Maybe I'll like it then, because I didn't really like many of the characters. But I know he's kind of in charge of a lot of the special effects, and in terms of kind of Japanese special effects.
That's why I was thinking like Godzilla. I mean, maybe they're still gonna do it, but obviously for a lot of the Titans in that, they used people in makeup and prosthetics, and then they enhanced it with CG, and that's what I was thinking more they were gonna do with Godzilla. And I guess there's a chance maybe they will still, but
I mean, you again remember too though, because those were actors who didn't have to wear suits. There was a lot more organic movement because it was a real person, whereas Godzilla is.
Oh, but those Titans can be pretty fucked up.
Yeah,
proportions and stuff.
It's still, but yeah. But
I mean, I didn't see the movie, so I don't know how it turned out in the end. But from the commercial I saw, which was supposed to be the same special effects,
I saw some clips, and I definitely see what I mean. It was more like the specialty Titans, like the Colossal Titan, or the main one, or like the arm, that kind of stuff. But a lot of them are really just kind of actors with makeup on, and you kind of impose them and or put them in a miniature set, and they're kind of. But again, because it's a real person, it's easier to digitally mess with like an arm or something, because it's still mostly real, whereas this is a suit and with an actor inside, and this suit is a lot more isn't really using the actor's anatomy as much as previous ones. Like I said, his arms aren't controlling the arms. It's kind of more of like a big shell on him, which again, you can make him bigger and do more things with the anatomy, but I fear at the expense of a performance. So
yeah,
and
I think
again,
there's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how they do it.
yeah.
I mean, the design itself is already pretty ballsy just for what they're doing. So
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll see. I mean, they want to try and bring Godzilla back on a global scale, and may or may not work for them, and it could backfire on them, or it could be probably the best thing that happened to them. So who knows?
I mean, hopefully the latter. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all rooting for them. We're all Godzilla fans. I mean, I don't care if it's a guy in a suit. I don't care if it's completely.
As long as it's good.
Yeah, it's like I've said before. It's like I know some people are saying if it's not a suit, it's not Toho, it's not Godzilla. I'm like, well, have fun limiting yourself. To me, it's like, as long as he's Godzilla, I like to think that 100 years after we're all dead, and our great grandparents are like on dome number 9 on Mars somewhere, and they're still making these movies, and they're using whatever special effects they have at the time, to make movies. Who knows what it is? And if regardless if it's a guy in a suit or holographic technology or whatever, I still hope they're making Godzilla movies because I feel the character transcends any one type of special effect. They're just means, and they're just means to an end, and the end is seeing him on screen, and that's what matters. So as long as it's good, again, I know it sounds like we're nitpicking, but at the end of the day, it's like if it's good, I really don't care. I don't care if they go the guy right in a suit, as long as just make it a really good suit.
Well, as long as it looks good. I mean, that's essentially what we want. We want something that's
just supports the name.
Yeah.
And I think it will. And again, I think a lot of it again is just they don't have a lot.
I was gonna say there's really not much to go on still. But...
Yeah, and I think it's because again they're probably still working a lot in post production because this is going to be the most effects heavy Toho Godzilla film. So with that said, they're not going to have at this point in time as much completed as they would have had in the past, and it was a lot more practical.
Right.
Here they have, and again, maybe that's all the suit could do is just kind of stand and walk. And then you add the puppets and the CGI, and then now he's a complete character, but they might not have those shots done yet. So, because I know the first shot you see where he roars in the beginning, that was the hand puppet they said they used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so right there, he's moving, he's animated. So obviously there's going to be shots of him where he's, doing stuff, but I think those shots aren't really completed yet. So they gave us something.
Right.
Which is still cool, because at the end of the day, I'm glad I finally saw something. I'm glad I finally kind of see a 3-dimensional representation of this suit. And while I'm still not a huge fan of the design, I definitely think it works better now that I've seen it. It's still weird, but I can work with it.
Yeah, right now you're like, I don't know about it, but then at the same time you're like, okay, I get it. So,
one quick note though, I do believe we witnessed one of the shots in this film being filmed.
It's possible.
Oh,
There's a shot at kind of towards the end where it's kind of at dusk, and you see like a really wide shot where he's imposed in the city from afar. It's like really right. I think it's right before the logo Shin Gojira comes up. But it's just a really wide shot of showing him in the city. We were because that height and that view. We were at this past October. Skytree, which is the tallest point in Japan. Or the tallest man-made point in Japan, and we saw that same view, and kind of we were looking out the tower, and we saw a helicopter just hovering, but probably about
it was like about 10 or 12 minutes, maybe longer.
Yeah, probably about maybe like 20-30 meters away from Skytree, just hovering at the same angle, and it was at that angle. So when I watched that scene, looking at that shot from way up high, it was a helicopter shot. So, and it would have been around the time they were still filming. So I think, because I was wondering, why is there a helicopter just...
There's a slim chance.
Yeah, it probably wasn't. This is probably just me praying.
Well, it's like, how often do you see helicopters in Japan?
Just float. So I'm just saying, might not have been, but I'm going to tell myself it was. So I can say I was in a Godzilla movie. So long story short, I'm in a Godzilla movie.
You're not in it.
And yes, I was there. I was in the airspace. I was breathing that air, okay? Don't take that away from me.
Okay.
But yeah. But yeah, it comes out, I think, July 29th, 2016. I know it's slated for a home release in 2017. I'm hoping that they might do some like one night only showings here or there in the States, kind of how they did with the.
I'd be surprised if they didn't.
I hope, yeah, because I really don't feel like waiting a whole another year on top of that now to see this movie. I'm sure, as resourceful as we are, we'll find other ways. But yeah, but I have.
Whatever do you mean, Dreagen? We do not condone or nor do we participate in the pirating or illegal downloading of films.
We're gonna fly to Japan and see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. So.
We have friends.
Yeah. I got people. Yes. I know people. Shit.
You talking about Willis?
But yeah, if they do make any announcements of any kind of like screenings here or there, we'll pop on, let you know. Because at the end of the day, we want to support this. So if it is released here, do your best to see it. You know, when it is released on home media of any kind, whether it's digital download, Blu-ray, DVD, or whatever kind of space age medium they're using by that point. Just support it, spend some money on it, because again, that's what keeps all this going. That's what keeps these films going. That's what shows these studios that there is an interest in these films. And if you're a Toho purist, watch the American films. So Toho still makes these movies. And if you're curious about just the character in general, check out even the Japanese films, because
I was gonna say, I'm betting they'll release the Blu-ray with English subtitles, probably.
Yeah.
And you can buy stuff on Amazon Japan.
Yeah.
Import it.
So, however, you gotta spend some money on, do what you can. But yeah, hopefully we'll see some. Cause I'd like to see this movie on the big screen, if nothing else, just to see another Godzilla movie on the big screen. Because being a Westerner, we don't get that often.
Yeah,
so. It's rare. To this day, the only two Godzilla films I saw was the '98 one, unfortunately. And when they did, when they actually released Godzilla 2000 here, I was like one of two people in that theater, but I was there, man. I was there.
Yeah, I remember going with a group of people. So,
support it. It's cool, and it's Godzilla. And again, it's like at the end of the day, I know some people think it's corny because it's soup. I'm like, get past it. At the end of the day, it's still cool. It's not a Muppet. It's still a badass suit.
Be immersed into the world.
Yeah. Do that. But yeah, so Shin Gojira, a.k.a. Godzilla Resurgence, comes out this year. So hopefully we will see it come stateside this year. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think I still think it's gonna be cool. If nothing else, it'll be something different we haven't seen from Godzilla yet, which is always And again, a lot of my favorite Godzilla films don't actually feature my favorite design. So as long as the movie is good and he's cool, then all right, whatever. He's got Frankenstein face, but you know what? So what?
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get over it.
It's not about the looks; it's about the personality.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he's got
Stop
a big
Godzilla
heart.
shaming.
When did this become more beautiful than this?
I'm sure that meme will crop up.
Yeah, well, it already has, actually. Alrighty, well, I guess that'll wrap it up for this episode. I want to thank my guest and brother from another mother, Greg. As always, thank you for your insight. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show. You seem to have a passing interest in this sort of thing, so.
I don't know. I kind of like it. I'm here. Whatever.
What else you got going on?
This is true.
And as always, thank you to my lovely co-host who.
We'll always do my little.
Yeah, she's always pantomiming over here. All the glorious hand gestures I see off to my side that nobody but us can see.
Special that way.
Yeah, it is. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Keep checking in with the Kaiju Cataclysm podcast for more news on kaijus and, the wonderful, fantastic world of giant monsters. And remember, this podcast is not just for the fanboys. It's for all of you out there, because there are more normies in the world than us weirdos. So please, all you normal people out there, keep supporting all this, because you're the real reason why they keep making these movies, because you end up spending more money on it than we do. So we thank you for your continued support. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.